The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Danny Laurel. Now here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front. The number of jobless Filipinos decreased in November of last year. Now, data from the Philippine Statistics Authority showed that unemployment rate eased to 4.2% in November from 4.5% in October. This November reading translates to 2.18 million unemployed Filipinos. That is lower than the 2.24 million recorded in October of 2022. However, underemployment rate slightly rose to 14.4%, or about 7.6 million Filipinos from 14.2% in October. This as the labor force participation rate, or the Filipinos aged 15 years old and above, increased to 67.5% rather, from 64.2% in October. Now, to weigh in on the improvement in the labor force and other issues, we have with us Jonathan Ravelas, Director for E-Management for Business and Marketing Services. Hello, Sir Jonathan, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Danny. Good morning, everyone.
Sir,
well, it's a good number.
Okay, go ahead. What does this mean, sir? I mean, on the one hand, we feel on the ground, naghihirap yung mga tao, mahalang bilihin, but at the same time, there are better jobs. Is this, a real figure to be believed?
Well, I think if we look at what happened last fourth quarter, we can actually see a lot of people, the spending, or what people have called revenge spending, we have seen this, people going to the malls, and compared to probably a year ago, we could actually really see a lot of people having more jobs now that the economy is more open. Our COVID restrictions have been, we're almost back to normal, except we're still seeing people wearing masks. So, what does this mean for the common tao, no? On one hand, maganda na nagkakaroon ng trabaho yung bawat Pilipino. And this is something that we can really say the word resilience, no? Because 70% of our economy is consumption driven. So if you have more jobs, people have money to spend. So and most likely, as long as jobs continue to be there for Filipinos, then the consumption growth will still be there. And if you look at what we saw in 2019, when we started breaking the per capita GDP of 3,000, we're really seeing more of the resilience of consumption. With that said, the other hand is that the Phillips curve, which shows that if there is low unemployment, inflation will be high. Conversely, if unemployment is high, inflation will be low. So ito ngayon yung situation natin. That's why the inflation of 8.1 highlights two things. There is a demand component that we've already seen because of the Christmas season, and plus the supply bottlenecks that we continue to see. So the conclusion there is that probably until the first half, we will still have elevated inflation. So whether December is a peak, or we could probably see it January or within the first quarter, no?
Okay.
So parang, this is something to
watch out for, which sounds a little bit like the US story, no? But still I'll get to the inflation in a bit, sir. Very interesting points you raised. But in terms of the underemployment, that still went up. And then you have anecdotally people, changing jobs for things that are probably not what they are qualified for. What does that tell you about the economy? Have we really recovered from the pandemic-induced slump, or are corporates still not really hiring their employees back on a full-time basis?
Well, I guess people are still cautious at this time. I guess in terms of the environment, business remains cautiously optimistic. People are still feeling whether this revenge spending will really continue. And of course, there are two major things that cloud the business environment. One is that you have a stalemate in the geopolitical front between Russia and Ukraine, which will likely keep commodity prices elevated. Okay. The other one, of course, is the pandemic is still here. Although we have better ways to defend ourselves, We don't know if there are other variants that could be coming. So you still have that, a potential linchpin based on health issues. Plus, of course, you have other aspects like China. Now, that I think when we talk about China could be positive. If they really fully reopen, then what we've felt in the 2021, in 2022, we can actually feel that in terms of tourism and probably, the Chinese tourists coming here and, we will actually benefit, especially with the slightly weaker peso.
Okay. Sir, you talked about the demand-driven inflation, no? And you can see in my Bloomberg terminal, just inflation from March over till the last print of December, it's really just an uphill trend. To what extent is this, as you mentioned, still blamable on the Russia-Ukraine war? To what extent is this a positive thing that we have higher employment figures, people are spending more? To what extent is it, let's say, our fault na, we have problems in the agricultural sector that has nothing to do anymore with possibly the price of oil, which has come down?
Well, I think it's a combination. I think the geopolitical situation highlighted a lot of vulnerabilities for the Philippines. So I guess one of the things is that in the previous administration, the solution was to really import. No, we saw this in 2018. We tried to reduce inflation through the Rice Tariffication Act, which is good, but we haven't done it on the others. But right now, what we really need, and this is again over the last 2.5 years, when people talk about ESG, the global situation today highlights another letter, the letter R for Ravelas. I am sorry, it is for resiliency. So food security is one, and again, we see a lot of people highlighting onions, yung sibuyas, the common sibuyas, di ba? People
Basic,
look at it as 700 pesos per kilo, di ba? So, again, this is something that, a lot of people think this simpleng sibuyas, ganun kamahal, di ba? So, we need to be able to try to, try to bridge the gap between the middleman and the farmer. That is one of the things that we need to be able to do. So, we need to improve productivity so that we can improve the farm-to-table strategy of farmers.
All right. Sir, to that end, are you happy, satisfied with the performance of course, our president here when it comes to dealing with the agricultural problems, especially when it comes to the extension of the lowered tariffs, importation policies to at least have a band-aid solution? Have you seen this in any way lowering the prices?
Okay. Let me put it this way. From the State of the Nation address, the President of the Philippines have highlighted the necessary things to be able to try to bring a better agricultural sector. However, these initiatives will take time.
Okay.
What we're doing, this tariff relief importations are just temporary stopgap measures to hopefully be able to do the limiting the inflation effects. But there's no shortcut to improving productivity. That's what we need. So this is something that we really have to focus on. Compared to other countries, and a lot of people talk about Vietnam and the Philippines. Vietnam has better yields in rice, and we have better big agricultural spaces. What is the difference is that they're blessed with a river. Kulang tayo ng irrigation. Yan ang kailangan natin gawin. So this will not happen overnight. So the only thing that we need to do is start working on this infrastructure. We need to be able to work on them while hopefully government doing the additional work of providing relief in terms of the marginalized sector. So nagbibigay sila ng mga subsidies, di ba?
Okay.
Which is a bit costly. So it becomes burdensome for government if they continue to do this. They have to move faster.
Sir,
And
sorry to interrupt. No, you are right now in your new role looking very closely in the agricultural sector. Can you say that the worst is over when it comes to the food shortages, the onion issue, the food prices, and at least you did say it's gonna take some time, pero at least mafe-feel ba natin na in the next few months, bababa naman ng prices?
sad to say, malayo pa ang umaga.
Okay.
So, you know, what we really need to do is really create a plan of how we want to do the planting. Because, you know, in the Philippines, maraming gaya-gaya. So, pag may isa, nag-click yung pagtatanim ng palay, lahat magtatanim ng palay. So, dapat, we need to structure our agricultural set of what products you can plant in a certain area and produce for the rest. So that they'll be able to sell all the produce properly.
Okay.
What we're doing at EMBM is really trying to look at small communities by really trying to make them into associations.
Okay.
So that they'll work together in such a way that one, they improve productivity. They can eventually have the yield and sell it directly to supermarkets or individuals. And eventually, we also teach them financial literacy.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that. And you know, final question here because I need to ask, no, what is your outlook on the BSP's rate, especially now that inflation is elevated, like you mentioned, baka tumaas pa. The agricultural sector has a lot of catching up to do. How much more tightening can we manage without hurting our economy and growth?
Okay, we have no choice but to further raise interest rates. As I said, inflation, one of the things that people look at is how the BSP handles inflation. With what we talked about of falling unemployment rates, what we're seeing in the US, that jobs are still strong, there's a real need to raise interest rates. Further, probably another 1% in the US, that will also probably mean in the Philippines another 150 basis points.
Okay.
But it can be a gradual pace. So this is something that could still continue this year rather than expectations of probably towards the fourth quarter of 2023 where we get to probably see a pause.
Okay, sir, from very painful being 1 to 10, a better economy for this year, what is your outlook for 2023?
Okay, I'm looking at the growth rate that is actually between 6 to 7%. So that's actually a much lower growth rate, mainly because of the elevated inflation. So this is still something that market is still fighting. However, if there will be infrastructure spending that the government will release in the first half of the year, that could actually, hopefully, offset
Circumvent.
or compensate these uncertainties. Of course, the other thing is that a lot of people are still expecting a potential recession in the US. So whatever fallout, we need to insulate ourselves. And in the past, under President Arroyo, we actually saw some infrastructure spending after the global financial crisis. So
Okay,
what we
interesting.
really need to do is to continue our infrastructure spending. Now, the challenge really is how are we going to pay for this? And I have a solution for that. Is that people have to pay the right taxes. Government will have to instill efficiency in the collection of taxes. If we're able to do that and they're able to improve on the collections, then definitely there's no need to raise new taxes.
All right. So accountability, of course, for those that need to do their
Yeah.
legwork as well. Thank you so much for those insights, Jonathan Ravelas, Managing Director, E-Management for Business and Marketing Services. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Danny Laurel. President Bongbong Marcos has secured $22 billion worth of investment pledges from his 3-day state visit in China. These commitments are expected to generate more and more jobs for Filipinos. President Marcos also says he was able to discuss with Chinese President Xi Jinping concerns of harassment of Filipino fishermen working in the disputed waters. This as the two countries signed a deal to establish a communication mechanism for maritime issues.
Will this mean that there will be less or no harassment at all anymore of our Chinese fishermen who are fishing on their natural fishing ground, like, for example, Scarborough Shoal and the like?
The intention, of course, is to minimize all of these quote-unquote incidents. When lines of communication are open at mabilis, makapag-desisyon si President Xi, makapag-desisyon ako agad, palagay ko marami tayong mababawasan dyan sa mga problema na nakikita natin ngayon.
Now, aside from the safety and welfare of Filipino fisher folk, Marcos Jr. says China is open to bringing back negotiations for a joint oil and gas exploration in the West Philippine Sea. But the legal matters have to be ironed out.
We have to discuss some of the legal aspects of it. And I think the central issue there is the difference between sovereignty and sovereign rights. And that what we are asking for are sovereign rights. We are not demanding sovereignty over those areas. So that I think is where this is our kumbaga sa it's the wiggle room that we have to negotiate.
The government is eyeing a $550 million loan from the World Bank. The multilateral lender said the funding will be for the Philippine Rural Development Project Scale Up. The new program involves public infrastructure interventions to improve supply chain connectivity and efficiencies, and it will be implemented nationwide to cater to poor rural farmers, fisher folk, and agricultural small and medium enterprises. As of 2021, the World Bank has been the country's third largest source of development assistance programs. And this from the Philippine Star, British banking giant HSBC sees a sharp economic growth slowdown in the Philippines. HSBC projects the country's GDP growth to slacken to 4.4% in 2023. The Philippines exited the pandemic-induced recession with a 5.7% growth in 2021. The country then had a momentum with a 7.7% expansion from January to September in 2022. Now, HSBC says Bangko Central's tightening cycle is seen to curtail consumption and soaring inflation. The bank also sees the projected slowdown in global trade to provide, quote, a little bit of headwinds for the Philippines. Despite this, HSBC still sees strong employment, tourism recovery, and public investment supporting the country's growth this year. For more updates, visit News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World online, or visit our website, onenews.ph. For more in-depth analysis, you can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Danny Laurel. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.